NBC News senior correspondent Tom Brokaw has covered his share of crises in his storied career and says the coronavirus pandemic is the greatest challenge he has ever seen. Here's Tom's thoughts on how we defeat it with an eye on the future.
I used to work with a wise old journalist who used to say that journalism is a two-cycle engine. Now, next. Obviously, we're dealing with the now. We're frantically trying to bring this under control. But we must begin to think about the next as well. And I have a thought about that. Why don't we get Bill and Melinda Gates, who are better equipped to do this than anyone I know, to create a new agency and to bring the best minds in America and from around the world, for that matter, to ask, how did this happen? What have we learned about it? How do we bring it under control? That can be a 6-month experiment, and then convert that into an agency for the United States, because this issue is not going to go away. It is our future. This is the world that we have inherited with so many more people. So much of our biology is totally out of control. There are so few ways to get it under control and allow the kind of life that we all want to have. So this is the biggest test of my lifetime, quite honestly, how we deal with this. And if we don't measure up to that, it's a terrible commentary on all that we have been given as a country, as a nation of laws, as a country really of immigrants from all over the world who come to America because it's their best hope. And they're in the laboratories right now working to sustain this country and the life they want to have and they want all of us to have. So this is the greatest challenge you can possibly imagine. But it's not beyond our capacity to deal with it if we are willing to set aside petty differences and find ways to find common ground, which means everybody at some point is going to have to give some as well as take some. Those have been the lessons of my lifetime in journalism all over the world. I'm now at a stage when I'm looking back with an enormous sense of pride on what this country is all about and how I have been privileged to be a part of it and to be a witness to it. And finally, let me say to the young people, life is not just a day on the beach. You've got to remember that this is your country, your world that is being preserved. This is what you will inherit. And my advice to you is, get off the beach. Get going. Do something right now, because this is the life that you will be given. And then the question is, what will you do with it?
Commentary from NBC's Tom Brokaw. Let's bring in Professor at Princeton University, Eddie Glaude Jr., and John Heilemann is still with us as well. Eddie, I'll start with you. What are you looking at, and what is standing out to you as we're watching this catastrophe unfold?
Well, you know, Mika, I'm trying to grapple with how we're going to deal with death. People are having to grieve in private. What does it mean to sit Shiva? What does it mean not to have the second line? I'm thinking about Wynton Marsalis's father, Ellis Marsalis. We have our public rituals around death. And people are having to die alone, and people are having to grieve alone. And, you know, for 18 years, we had a policy where we would not photograph the military fatalities coming home with flags draped over the coffins because we wanted to hide death. But we're not going to be able to hide it now. So we're going to have to develop public rituals so that we can grieve appropriately. Because those of us who are locked away from our loved ones and those loved ones who have to die alone will require something more of us. This is more than just simply a war. It has something to do with the soul of the country. And part of that work, Mika, I really believe, has to do with how are we going to deal with the death that is on our immediate horizon? How are we going to grieve together since we can't be together in a certain sort of way? This is what I'm thinking about these days.
Beautifully said, as always, Eddie. John, Tom makes an important point that's been underlined by doctor after doctor, scientist after scientist, which is that this is going to be with us for a while. It may ebb and flow, but we talk about Dr. Fauci has said he expects it to return into the fall now. This is not something we're going to get through quickly as a country. It's something that we're going to live with in one way or another.
Right. And I think that there are three components of what Tom's talking about, Willie, that I think are all super important and that we still very much need to focus on and need to demand and expect from the president. One of them is embodied in Tom's proposal is a respect for scientific expertise and professionalism and for the voices of people who have actual expertise about questions related to science and medicine. That's the first thing. The second thing is underlying it is this notion of common national unity, bringing the country together to defeat an enemy, and not just this enemy, but the future enemies like this enemy that we're going to be confronting down the line. So a call to national unity and purpose. And then thirdly, it's a new agency that Tom's talking about. And I think, most people outside the context of this crisis, the notion that government is already big enough and that government needs to know its limits, those are the core kind of precepts that we live by. But right now, we recognize with the size of these stimuluses, the size of the emergency packages, that the government must do more. And so the federal government has to be at the center of our response here. I think all three of those elements, whether you proceed down with the actual tangible proposal that Tom is putting forward or not, they have to be at the core of the way Donald Trump looks at this. If we're going to have any chance of minimizing at this point the kind of damage that lies ahead, and the damage is going to be terrible in these next few weeks, Donald Trump and the people around him need to get their arms around all of those elements and try to proceed with a sense of respect for expertise, with a unifying message, a consistent message, and one that recognizes that there is a bunch of stuff that needs to happen now that only the federal government can do, and that it's not okay, it's not sufficient to blame governors, to say that the states can handle these matters. They can't. This is a job that only the federal government is equipped to take on.
John Heilemann, Eddie Glaude Jr., thank you both. And coming up, new guidelines on who should be wearing masks is expected today from the Trump administration. Plus, the Navy relieves a captain who sounded the alarm about the coronavirus infections on board an aircraft carrier. We'll have that new reporting straight ahead on Morning Joe. We're back in 2 minutes.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.